Welcome to FFRF's Ask an Atheist on Facebook Live. I'm Dan Barker.
I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor, and Dan and I are co-presidents of the Freedom From Religion Foundation.
I'm Andrew Seidel, a constitutional attorney and FFRF's Director of Strategic Response.
So this is Ask an Atheist. So if you have any questions during today's show, you can ask them right here on Facebook or send an email to askanatheist@ffrf.org.
Today we're going to do something fun. We're going to do a short recap of FFRF's 41st Annual National Convention highlights. This took place in San Francisco over the weekend, and it featured some amazing speakers and presentations, including Salman Rushdie and Cecile Richards, and it even included a member of Congress.
And before we recap that wonderful weekend with a record near 1,000 attendees, let's talk briefly about yesterday's midterm elections. Of course, FFRF is nonpartisan, and we don't take stances on elections. We can't as a 501c3 nonprofit. But we were closely watching the results because they do impact so much of what we do. And first, the bad news. Sadly, the Senate gains help the Christian nationalists take over of the federal judiciary, and they make FFRF's job that much harder.
But there is some good news. Kim Davis, the Kentucky bigot and Rowan County clerk, who denied same-sex couples marriage license, lost her re-election bid. Enjoy obscurity, Kim. I can't wait never to hear about you again.
Then there's some exciting news from Nebraska. District 8 will have a new state senator who is a freethinker. Her name is Megan Hunt. She's a progressive and an out atheist. She won her seat by 30 points. And she won't be alone in Nebraska. Ernie Chambers, a friend of FFRF and a champion of the First Amendment who represents District 11, is also a non-superstitionist. So well done, Nebraska.
And you can see Ernie's wearing the Emperor Has No Clothes award that FFRF has bestowed on him. Alabama's constitutionally forbidden love of the Ten Commandments displays continues. Amendment 1 unfortunately passed with 71% of the vote. Boy, is that dumb. Apparently, Alabama has learned nothing from the embarrassing and un-American antics of Roy Moore. Alabama voters just approved putting such displays up in governmental buildings, including in public schools, which is unconstitutional. So we will, of course, do all we can to challenge this constitutional rewrite. It's a clear violation of the Supreme Court and other court precedent.
And this one is particularly alarming given the news from last week, because on Friday the Supreme Court agreed to hear a case on a 40-foot cross in Bladensburg, Maryland. That case was brought by the American Humanist Association, which actually, they won the case at the appeals level. So the fact that the High Court accepted it is more worrisome. The justices tend to take cases because they want something different. And with Kavanaugh on the court, there's a concern that the new conservative majority may wish to use this case to overturn 70 years of precedent against religious displays on government property.
Andrew, during the election, you were poll watching yesterday.
I was.
Did you see or learn anything interesting?
We had a couple interesting moments at my particular poll, but the most interesting moment of the day actually came, I got a call from the office saying one of my buddies at the ACLU down in Florida needed a word, and we found out that there was this church in Florida, the Grace of God Church in Newport St. Richie. This is a church, is a polling location, which is problematic in and of itself, which we've dealt with before, but it's even more problematic because the pastor put this sign up on church property, but in his small mind, 100 feet away from the polling location, and the sign read, "Don't vote for Democrats on Tuesday and sing Oh How I Love Jesus on Sunday."
So, of course, while you and the ACLU were conferring over this, FFRF's associate legal counsel, Liz Cavell, drafted a letter on behalf of FFRF to the IRS. This is a violation of the church's 501c3 status. An electioneering like this can and should lose the church its tax exemption. And the county, thankfully, has indicated it'll be looking for a replacement polling place.
That's right, and we are not done with this church yet, not by a long shot. This was it was a brazen attempt to violate the electioneering ban, and I think we all know why the pastor felt so emboldened. It's because of Trump and his rhetoric on destroying the Johnson Amendment. which is the rule that prevents churches from electioneering.
And that's why FFRF is fighting so hard to preserve the Johnson Amendment, and why we sued Trump successfully on this very issue. The Florida election was so tight, the gubernatorial race at this moment is down to a 60,000 vote margin when more than 8.1 million votes were cast.
And I actually just read that the Gillum campaign thinks that was closer to 12,000 vote margin just before I came up here to do this.
Well, so there's a lot of things we don't know yet. And let's end our election roundup on a nice note. In California, U.S. Representative Jared Huffman, co-founder of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus and a proud none, he calls himself an agnostic, was reelected. It wasn't really a surprise, but it does show his resounding victory by more than 50 points, that it's possible to be openly non-religious and win office. And now, Andrew, you've been representing FFRF lobbying in Congress. You formed a relationship with Representative Huffman's office. You were even on his podcast. And FFRF very proudly bestowed our Emperor Has No Clothes Award on Representative Huffman this past weekend at our annual convention in San Francisco. And that award is a statuette that you saw Ernie Chambers holding of the legendary emperor, reserved for public figures who tell it like it is about religion.
So Representative Huffman represents California's 2nd District, which is from the Bay Bridge all the way up to the Oregon border. And he kicked off the convention with a rousing call to arms. After describing how the founding father Thomas Paine was often ostracized for his atheism, even by Teddy Roosevelt, he explained how, as a self-described humanist, he can thread the needle and still remain popular with his voters.
So how is it that a sitting member of Congress can publicly identify as a non-religious humanist and not get the Thomas Paine treatment? I think part of it has to do with my district, which starts at the Golden Gate Bridge, goes all the way up to the Oregon border. Is anyone here from the North Bay or the North Coast? All right. Well, you know that this is a beautiful and also very progressive place where, for the most part, people could care less about my religion, as long as I'm doing good work and as long as I'm not trying to impose my religious views on any of them. The other explanation for how I've avoided a political backlash, at least so far, involves how I've approached the issue. I go out of my way to be respectful of other people's faith choices. I really try to project that I'm not trying to convince anyone else to believe like me. I try not to criticize or patronize or judge other people's religions as long as they're not doing bad things in the name of their religion or trying to impose it on other people. I also try to have some spiritual humility. All of my experiences and all of my reasoning leads me to be non-theistic, but I've also said that I leave a little crack in the spiritual door, and that if God ever wants to talk to me, I will take the call. That hasn't happened in 54 years, and I am not exactly waiting by the phone, but who among us would not take that call? And finally, through the work that I do and the values and the priorities that I try to follow, and to some extent to the faith label that I have chosen, humanist, I try to convey a moral framework that demystifies perhaps what could be misperceptions that people would have about a person who doesn't believe in God. I think most people don't care about a politician's religiosity. In fact, I think more and more people are turned off by politicians that are outwardly religious. But I think people want to know that their elected leaders have a moral framework, that they have a strong sense of right and wrong, that they have values and priorities that they can support. And so I try to convey that because, like probably all of you in the free thought community, I do have a strong moral framework. We do care. We care about basic decency and social justice and human rights, and about protecting the only planet that we know of in the entire universe that sustains life. We feel a sense of responsibility to future generations. And we don't believe these things because religion tells us to or because we're trying to earn an afterlife. These are just good human values, whether you're a Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hindu, humanist, or atheist. So those of us in the free thought community, along with our progressive allies in the faith community, have a lot of good work to do together. We need to defend the line of separation between church and state. We need to support responsible public policies based on facts and science and reason. And of course, we need to defeat the war on Festivus.
So that's pretty cute. Actor John de Lancie is a longtime friend of Free Thought. He's a new friend of FFRF's. We met him last year when he kindly lent his celebrity to help us unveil FFRF's new statue of Clarence Darrow on the lawn of the courthouse. And of course, he's famous for his roles in Star Trek, The Next Generation, Breaking Bad, many movies and stage plays. And he's a fierce advocate for truth, as he's started a lot of groups, works with symphonies, works with science groups. He accepted the inaugural Clarence Darrow Award in San Francisco. That's a miniature bronze version of the 7-foot original that we put up at the lawn of the Scopes trial. And John de Lancie gave an absolutely eloquent and timely talk about lying.
When so many are so willing to forsake reason in favor of faith, is it any wonder that our leaders embrace the unreasonable, the unimaginable? That's why educating children to be curious is so important. Why debunking the notion that morality is derived from a single book is so important. Why speaking up when others remain silent is so important. As George Orwell said, during times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. That's why organizations like Freedom from Religion are so important, because the greatest, most fundamental service we can do in this world is to keep truth alive. Thanks.
He was really riveting.
To keep truth alive. The audience really loved that talk. They also liked the talk by the Secular Coalition for America's executive director, Larry Decker. He gave a rousing defense of the value of secular government.
Our campaign is centered around 4 values: freedom, inclusion, equality, and knowledge. Freedom means that religion should be protected but never imposed. When we look at modern-day evangelicalism, what is the one characteristic that stands above the rest? It's their hypocrisy. For decades, they have claimed to be the moral majority and the standard bearer of family values. But what have we seen from them over the last decade? We've watched them hound one side of the aisle for their shortcomings while turning the other cheek for those on their side of the aisle. We have watched men twice and thrice divorced tell our LGBTQ brothers and sisters that their same-sex marriage would destroy the sanctity of marriage. We've watched them tell us that abstinence is the best way to avoid teen pregnancies, while watching the teen birth rate and STD transmissions in their districts rise. We've watched them complain about and legislate about the imposition of Sharia law on one hand, while on the other hand, they are codifying into our justice system laws that are based on their own religions. Think abortion and anti-marriage equality and other laws that they have been trying to pass. Laws based on any faith will always leave someone out. Having access to reproductive health and the right to choose doesn't force anyone to have an abortion. Having marriage equality doesn't force someone to marry someone of the same gender or require clergy to perform the ceremony. And having the right to die with dignity doesn't mean that everyone with a terminal illness has to take that pill. The religious right would say that those issues are immoral. Well, you know what I think is immoral? I think it's immoral to force a woman to watch an ultrasound of her fetus before terminating a pregnancy. I think it is immoral to prevent love from flourishing. And I think it's immoral to force a human being to suffer needlessly while facing the worst challenge one can possibly face, and one they know they will ultimately lose. But here's the thing. When the government favors any one group over another, we are divided by our differences and not united by what we share in common. It is our belief that in a secular government, patriotism has no religion.
Indeed, patriotism has no religion. Good line. Sara Hater, the director of Ex-Muslims of North America, which is a group devoted to freeing people from the strictures of Islam, gave the assembled audience some advice on how they can best help people like her when they see them struggling with that choice.
By this time at this incredible conference, and increasingly towards the end of the day today, you will meet more people who truly exemplify courage, and many of you will come up to them and you might have already done so, and then after the conference to thank them for their work. And as someone who occasionally receives these comments, I have to say that these are appreciated more than I can put into words. But there is something that you can do that is more meaningful than any note of thanks. If you see someone that inspires you, honor them not with thanks or with applause, but also with allyship. Tell them that they will not be alone because you will stand with them, that you will place your skin in the game as they have, and you will bear the costs of failure along with them. And in your life, where and when you find an overwhelming urge to correct a wrong, to highlight a misconception, to stand up even to your own team, you will do so, and that you will not choose to be bullied or scared into silence. And it will feel difficult and unnatural, because it is difficult and unnatural, but it is no less worth doing because of it. Thank you for this great honor, and thank you to FFRF.
Central Florida freethinker and Nothing Fails Like Prayer awardee Jocelyn Williamson gave us the atheist invocation that she had presented to the Winter Park, Florida City Council earlier in the year.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, City staff, and citizens of Winter Park. On this September afternoon, we gather to listen and address the needs of the people of the city. So let us focus solely on the task at hand. Carl Sagan wrote, "We can judge our progress by the courage of our questions and the depth of our answers, our willingness to embrace what is true rather than what feels good. Today, may we use only our best skills and judgment. May we keep ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of the matter that is placed before us. May we lean forward, keeping in mind the welfare of all the city citizens, embracing reason and free inquiry, working harmoniously together to transform our city through love and to accomplish good works with compassion and consideration for all." Thank you.
And Salman Rushdie was at the convention. He gave a keynote on Friday, and the convention also featured honoree Cecile Richards. She's the past president of Planned Parenthood and author of the new book, Make Trouble. The book is part memoir. It's partly a how-to book on how to change the world through activism. In a conversation with Annie Laurie Gaylor, she talked about the challenges involved in getting high-spirited progressive organizations to work together.
And you write in your book, coordinating progressive leaders is like keeping puppies in a basket. Just when they are all in, someone jumps out. So how did you do it, and what is your advice on that?
Oh, well, no, it's just, I mean, look, it's like, because we're opinionated and folks, you know, we don't follow along as sheep. I mean, I think the reason we started it was because I felt like we had all these different groups doing great work, but none of them were really talking to each other. And I think the only way that anything ever works is people don't do things for your reasons. They do things for their own reasons. And I think what we were able to show is, and I'll never forget being in Pennsylvania, you know, that it was smarter in some areas for the labor union folks to be carrying the message in doing door-to-door outreach on voting. And so the Planned Parenthood folks could actually just go with them and help and support them. Whereas in the Philly suburbs, where we had a lot of independent women, labor was able to join up with Planned Parenthood and begin to talk to people about issues that matter to them. And I do believe we've gotten better, but it's very frustrating that we haven't made progress on some fundamental issues of democracy. I feel like as even though progressive groups are better coordinated and work better together, And I think actually in the last 2 years, it's happened even more so as everyone has been on the front lines of trying to fight back. I still think there are so many hurdles to our democracy, to basic voting, that even if we are really well organized, institutional barriers exist, and particularly for working people, for women, for students, frankly, the people who would probably change who was in office if they had the chance to vote.
Comedian Leanne Lord is an FFRF and personal favorite. She confessed she had a bit of trouble getting back into the convention center.
But no, I really have been enjoying everyone. Salman Rushdie, everybody, what? I actually have a little confession to make. I missed the first 15 minutes of his talk. Yeah. And here's what happened. I got caught outside of the area. 2 ladies saw my conference badge, my convention badge, and they said, well, what is the group about? You know, what are you guys doing? And there was nobody, none of you guys were there. It was just me. I'm like, holy crap, this is it. I'm on. And I said, well, the Freedom from Religion Foundation was started in 1976. It went national in 1978. And the purpose is to ensure, through education and litigation, that we maintain the separation of church and state as it was outlined and intended in the United States Constitution. Now that, they were not impressed. They were Jehovah's Witnesses. Usually smell that brand of Kool-Aid.
So we put this recap together very quickly, thanks to our video director, Bruce Johnson, his family, Chris Line, one of the photographers. So this is necessarily missing a whole lot of major speakers, including 2 very special awards. We debuted the Avajit Roy Courage Award, and I will briefly explain that has to do with the murder in 2015 of Avajit Roy in Bangladesh by Islamic terrorists. And there has been no annual commemoration of that death until we put together this at our convention with his widow, Bona Ahmed. And we gave this award to Rizal Ahmed, no relation, who is a gay Bangladeshi who co-founded the first gay periodical in Bangladesh, and then his co-editor was hacked to death in 2016. So we see a pattern. And Rizal is now in this country seeking asylum, and the $5,000 award will go to the continuation of Rupban, which is the gay and lesbian periodical in Bangladesh. We also don't have any footage of the Henry Zumak Freedom from Religious Fundamentalism Award. We will have more coverage later. And that went to Ensaf Haidar, who is the wife of Raif Badawi, who has been in prison in Saudi Arabia for 6.5 years. There was an international outcry when they were going to carry out a sentence to lash him 500 times. We were able to stop it after 50, but he's been languishing in prison for blasphemy, and he received a $10,000 award. And there were many other honorees, things that we didn't get to, and some funnier things.
Well, the convention had quite a diversity. We went from the very serious to the very funny. We actually had 2 very funny ladies at the convention. Besides Leanne Lord, who we just saw, Julia Sweeney did a hilarious older and wider stand-up comedy routine. So there was a lot of laughter at our convention.
And you can look for those slideshows soon on FFRF's website, and we'll do a complete section of photographs in the December issue of Free Thought Today, and nearly all the convention speeches will be reprinted. And we just got a question about whether or not the videos would be up on YouTube, and a lot of them will.
As soon as our hardworking videographer, Bruce Johnson, can get them done. And you will have noted that we did not have video of some of these people, including Representative Huffman, and there was a follow-up with the AV at the hotel on about 4 speeches, including yours, Dan. You gave a speech.
The best part of the convention was messed up. Wow.
And little Bailey Harris, 12, and her really cute presentation about her book, My Name is Stardust, a presentation about Governor Olson. Those we'll have in some form, but not, we'll have audio, but we won't have video.
Well, but they'll be reprinted in Free Thought
Yes,
Today.
and we also put that audio up on our website. We always do.
Starting in the December issue.
Yeah, and if you're a member of Free Thought Today, you'll get that in the December issue. And if you're not, join us at ffrf.org, and you'll get 10 of those issues every year.
And we are always pleased to send out a complimentary copy if you are new to FFRF. So you can just go to our website and the Ask for Information link. And Dan, did you have a favorite moment or a favorite?
Well, Deborah Dean Olson told me that her favorite part of the convention, Deborah was the granddaughter of a former atheist governor, Colbert Olson of California. She said her favorite part of the convention was the video that I showed of the chipmunks when I gave my talk about free will. Do you have that there, Bruce? Look at that little chipmunk coming up, my little friend. I call that one Little One. And so many people said to relate to another living creature like that, to see, was just pretty fun. And I tied that in with Free Will Explained. But I actually kind of think your interview with Cecile Richards, for me, that was like the best, most relaxed, most informative part of the whole event. You put a lot of work into that.
Thank you. And well, she was a rich, fertile field to ask questions of. I read her entire book, which is wonderful. Make Trouble. And we started off with a lot of anecdotes that were funny. And of course, there was a lovely legal presentation that you and our legal director, Rebecca Markert, and attorney Patrick Elliott gave. You spoke about strategic response and lobbying. Rebecca gave an overview of the 1,200 letters of complaint we have sent and the 350 victories. Patrick went through our litigation, which has been very impressive in the last year. So that was a lot of fun for me to see.
And you got a lot of applause for, you just barely scratched the surface.
We
you didn't
barely give a taster about all the stuff that the legal team does. Even in an hour, there's so much to cover.
Did you have a favorite part?
Yeah, I think Salman Rushdie was my favorite. I was blown away by his talk. He signed my first edition of Satanic Verses, which is really cool. And then he mentioned that he never really speaks about what happened surrounding the Satanic Verses, and he did for our crowd. Did for us, yes. And he mentioned in passing that some nice people sent him a T-shirt that said "Blasphemy is a victimless crime," without realizing that you had sent him the T-shirt.
Many years ago.
In 1989.
And we weren't sure he got it, so that was fun.
And then we got to say at the end of it, and he really enjoyed that. And I think we're going to have to bring back the T-shirt now, given that it's Salman Rushdie approved.
It was a baseball jersey. So we'll have to see, actually with the rise of blasphemy persecution, it has become very relevant again, unfortunately. But he was very charming, and I think what was a surprise to a lot of people, how funny he was. The first 20 minutes, we were all laughing. Then he got serious.
Yeah, well, his books are so witty, and it was nice to see that in person, too.
Now, that was a contract, and we did not have permission to record him or videotape him. But we can write up, just objectively, his talk, and so we'll be doing that. It was very, very good.
And
you had to be there, I'm afraid.
Bailey Harris, the 12-year-old who talked about the book that she wrote, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, she was inspired by the Stardust line from the Cosmos series that were all made of stardust, and wrote these 2 books. I think she's got a 3rd coming out now.
She's got a 3rd coming out. She got our Richard and Beverly Hermsen Student Activist Award of $5,000, and that couple could not be there, but they were very enthusiastic about her winning that award. And she came out of a Utah bigotry situation, and instead of being bitter or unfriendly toward other children, she wanted to educate them. She said she almost called it the Book of Truth, because they kept pushing the Book of Mormon on her. And then we are going to be airing interviews with many of the speakers, including Cecile Richards and John de Lancie and Julia Sweeney and Leanne Lord and Bailey Harris and many of the speakers, and some of the ex-Muslim speakers, Sara Hater.
Yeah, it's not just the convention talks.
So there'll be stuff coming up from that. We were not allowed to interview Salman Rushdie.
While they were
He
at the
doesn't do those.
convention, we were able to sit them down. Bruce Johnson, our video director, sat them down and actually did a Free Thought Matters interview. So you'll be able to see
He
those in the
filmed
future.
the interview.
Yeah, so we're
And we did it, and you did some, and Paul
Amit did some, yeah.
And yeah, it made a heavy schedule, but it was really fun to get that in. So there will be plenty of dividends and things to watch
if
for
you
the
weren't able
future.
to make this
Yes.
convention, you can come to the next one, which is here in Madison.
Yes, it is, in mid-October.
Mid-October next year.
And then in 2020, we'll be in San Antonio. And I forget the dates, but they're up on our website under events. And then we'll be in Boston for 2021.
I have
And
to
then back
say,
to Madison for 2022.
as good as all the speakers were and as fascinating as the program was, a lot of the fun of the convention happens in the hallways and during the meals when people are just talking. They're so happy to be in a group where they can say whatever they want at any time. And that's really part of the, if I can borrow the word, fellowship of being a freethinker.
And I
Take
think
back the
also
word.
when you have 1,000 people in the room, there's so much energy. It's very impressive, including to our speakers. I mean, you've gotten a lot of people together. It's just something about that synergy.
And the moment of bedlam, at the non-prayer breakfast, where everybody screamed.
One thing that the lawyers always talk about amongst ourselves is it's kind of like recharging our batteries, because we get so much hatred directed at us that and you go to the convention and it's
a love fest.
It is, and there's so many compliments and people saying thank you for what you do that it really does. It brings home how the work impacts not just a constitutional principle, but individuals.
I noticed that, Andrew, because last month you were kind of low and sagging, but today you've come back really on fire. So.
I'm a little tired, so I'm surprised that you think that.
So do we have any questions?
We have a couple questions. Bridget Gwynn asks, what did convention goers do with the Bibles in their hotel rooms?
Yes, well, that was a controversial thing. We always asked the hotel to get rid of the Bibles, have Bible-free rooms. They had agreed. And then that Monday before the convention, it was a week ago, suddenly they said, oh, it's too much work, we can't take them out. We didn't say anything to our members. We figured they're going to find them. We just had, you cut personally, Dan, a whole bunch of the Gideon Exposed Bible warning labels.
And I stuck some of those labels on the Bible.
But, I mean, we had them for people to use, but even before we started, a bunch of the early birds had started taking the Bibles and throwing them out of their room, or they were politely walking down to the registration desk and saying, we don't want this.
Yeah.
The staff came up to Lisa Strand, our director of operations, and said, we're going to fine you basically $3.50 for every Bible that we're having to deal with. And of course she said, no way.
Yeah.
And they immediately capitulated. And so for the people who hadn't registered yet, I believe they tried to take most of the Bibles out. Those of us who got there early had to deal with our Bibles in one way or another.
I mean, I walked down a few halls and there was piles of Bibles.
I think that the hotel, which will go unnamed, did learn its lesson.
They were unceremoniously
we were
thrown
trying
against the wall.
to actually help the hotel avoid this kind of thing. We did not send out directions to our members. We didn't say what to do. None of this was orchestrated. It was just, you don't want to pay high prices to stay in a hotel room to be proselytized, much less to have a book thrust on you that says that you should be killed because you're a blasphemer, or you're gay, or you're a woman who had sex before marriage, or whatever.
Or you're a fool because you don't believe.
In God. It's deeply offensive to those of us staying in hotel rooms to find that Gideon Bible. So we couldn't talk about that before at the convention, but that's the inside scoop.
And we did have a question about the next convention. So, and the dates are October 18th to the 20th here in Madison. And we should mention that this convention, the one last weekend, sold out very quickly.
Yes.
I don't think we can get tickets for the next convention yet.
Oh, no, we're not ready there. I mean,
But-
I think that we can, I'm pretty sure the ballroom holds 1,000. We were just skirting being too full. People have to be able to walk around and spread out a little bit.
But when registration opens for next year, don't wait.
We always say, please register now. Get your hotel room right away so you won't be disappointed. But it's a little early to be worried about that. We'll be putting that information out next year.
It's only been 3 days since the last one.
Yeah. So it really was, I heard nothing but compliments from everyone there. Now maybe there's somebody that had I had a complaint about the food, the meals. We do our best. I think the cupcakes were great. We always have complimentary hors d'oeuvres and cupcakes, and those were fine. We had ice cream.
Treats went
that
over
was a
pretty
hit.
big too. Yeah.
Yep. So,
we don't have any more questions.
okay.
So I think we can close it out unless you want to add in some more favorite thoughts.
I think that we just, it was a wonderful event right before the election. People were very excited. We had I'm Secular and I Vote displayed prominently. And if you want to talk about the text alert,
Sure,
you gave a little advertisement.
Yeah, we talked about this at the convention, but if you want to be kept up to date on issues that are happening in your area and issues that you can take action on, sign up for FFRF's new text alert system. You're going to text FFRF, text those 4 letters, to the number 52886. So text FFRF to 52886, and then when something's going on that we need your help on, you'll get a text right on your phone and just click a link, and it's super easy to take action on that. We really encourage everybody to do that. We had everybody at the convention take their phones out and actually do it in the room. And then we went through and helped people who needed it afterwards. Very
I guess
important.
I want to end by thanking, as we always do at the convention, but we want to thank our staff who were very, very hardworking. And we had about 14 people there. And we want to thank everybody who attended to make it a success, including our very wonderful roster of amazing speakers and honorees.
It's a great lineup.
Are we going to have an Ask an Atheist next week?
Probably.
We probably will.
We don't know what yet.
But you can join us again here on Facebook Live at noon Central Time on Wednesday for another episode of FFRF's Ask an Atheist.